We start today's news in Morocco, where rescuers continue to search for survivors in the rubble of collapsed buildings as the country begins 3 days of mourning for victims of a disaster that killed more than 2,000 people. Arise News chief correspondent John Cookson reports that Friday's quake, which is Morocco's deadliest in more than 6 decades, had an epicenter below a remote cluster of mountainous villages 60 kilometers south of Marrakech.
This is all that remains of a small town in Morocco's high Atlas Mountains, the epicenter of Friday's quake, the worst to hit this North African nation in decades. It took just 30 seconds when the earth shook late at night to wrought death and destruction, a cataclysm no one here will forget. And this was the Souss Valley, some 60 kilometers south of Marrakech, where the army and emergency services are not only recovering the dead, but also searching for possible survivors trapped under tons of rubble. No mechanized help here, they're using shovels and bare hands. While the death toll rises, they're clinging to the hope that there are people, perhaps whole families, still to be saved. For those no one can help now, graves are being dug, a scene repeated many times in this remote region where electricity has been cut and food and water is in short supply. This man says, "All of us living in the village have lost our homes. As you can see, the people here today have lost someone. Someone has died in every family," he said. In Marrakech last night, many frightened families spent the night in the open air. Some had lost their homes, others fearing their houses with cracked walls and roofs might collapse if there's another tremor. Look where the people are sleeping, she says. There's no help for us. And he says, our houses are cracked. They could fall down at any moment. The World Health Organization has estimated more than 300,000 people have been impacted by the disaster, and Spain is among countries sending soldiers, sniffer dogs and paramedics to help desperate families locate deceased loved ones and treat survivors. Even Algeria, which broke off ties with Morocco 2 years ago, is pledging support. Aid agencies here say there's only a short 24 to 48-hour window for those buried under rubble to be rescued. Meanwhile, the King, Mohammed VI, has called for 3 days of national mourning for the dead. John Cookson, Arise News, Marrakech, Morocco.
Joining us from Marrakech in Morocco to bring us updates is Arise News chief correspondent John Cookson. Good morning, John.
Hi there.
Good morning, John. Well, quite a tragic situation.
Good morning, guys.
Quite a tragic situation there. But what do we know about the aftershocks that have been, predicted could go on even for weeks, for months?
Well, there will be aftershocks, and I understand there has been scores of them since the initial quake on Friday, although on the ground, and I'm in Marrakech at the moment, you can't sense that here. It's been another difficult night for hundreds of families here in Marrakech who are still camping out in the open air. These are people who have lost their homes, or their homes have so many cracks and fissures in the walls and the roofs that they're scared that they're going to fall in on them if they go back home. It's a very difficult situation for the authorities here, who are also coping with the fact that thousands of buildings here in Marrakech have been affected by the quake. And if you go into the square, the main center of the old town, and go through a maze of streets surrounding the square, you can see the crumbling walls that appear as if they're going to fall down at any moment. It's a huge job that the authorities have here to check every building, and you perhaps know that some of the streets here are so narrow, just for two people perhaps to pass, and you have this great towering block of brick above your head, and when you walk along these alleyways, you can you can see bits of masonry still coming down as if the whole lot's going to collapse. It's a horrendous situation here in Marrakesh. The authorities having to deal with people sleeping rough. Fortunately, the weather at the moment is good, but it's still cold at night, so they're bundled up, men, women and children together in the parks. And also a check has to be made to so many buildings, and so many buildings have to be repaired before they're safe for the people to walk around without worry they're going to collapse, not only for the local people, but for the thousands of tourists who come to Marrakesh every year. So a difficult situation for the authorities. Aid is starting to get through. Out of the corner of my eye, I'm in a hotel in the old town. I can see troops of fresh aid workers starting to arrive. The airport very, very busy at the moment with people leaving and people arriving, planes coming in all the time for this huge rescue effort.
All right, I'm glad you talked about the thousands of tourists who visit Marrakesh, as Marrakesh is a tourist destination. And one of the concerns of the locals there is how to keep economic activity still going, you know, despite the devastations of over the weekend. There are reports that some of them do not want to close shop just so they don't discourage tourists. However, can you tell us the impact in terms of internationals? I know France has reported in terms of numbers of deaths. Do we have other nationalities that have been reported? What's tourism looking like at the moment? Are people even thinking about that, even though, you know, locals are thinking of how to still make some money in this case?
The death toll still isn't clear. We know that it's at least 2,000, and how many of those are foreign nationals, we don't exactly know at the moment. Some French people have indeed been lost, apparently. I was talking to some of the local business owners yesterday, and you know, the impact on their businesses, they describe it as catastrophic. For example, many tourists come here. They come to see Marrakesh, the historic old town, 1,000 years old. But also they take minibus rides out into the countryside to see other sites, gardens and historical sites outside of Marrakesh. But all those tours have been suspended because the roads in many cases are impassable. So the economic impact on local businesses, especially local tour operators, it will be absolutely huge. Tourists are leaving because there's very little for them to do here. The main square where you'd normally see fire eaters and storytellers, acrobats, bric-a-brac stalls and all the paraphernalia of an ancient square, that's not operating normally at the moment. So all tourists can do is to kind of wander around aimlessly and go into some of the cafes and restaurants that may remain open. But you know, here in Marrakesh, they can see the place in half a morning at the present time. So many people are leaving at the airport. As I say, it was very, very busy last night, and I'm sure that it's the same situation this morning. Incidentally, the airlines, quite disgracefully, are jacking up the prices of flights. Say a flight to Europe would normally cost from here about $200 perhaps, but now the airlines are charging $600-700 for a one-way ticket. So at least the airlines are profiteering from what's going on. But for the ordinary tourists, it's a very difficult situation, and they have to decide whether to stay or whether to go and try and find somewhere else in Morocco to see. But as far as the businesses are concerned here in Marrakesh, it's a complete disaster. And of course, bookings have been cancelled. The hotels have been reasonably well filled because now aid workers are starting to arrive, and of course journalists like myself. But numbers are well down in what is still the holiday period.
Okay, so two things, John, and good to see you again. Number one will be access. How easy or difficult is the access? Because I understand that going to those villages are dead roads, so you don't have paved roads. So it's making increasing difficulty to get in there to be able to get people out. And that's why they can't bring the heavy equipment like the big machinery to get people out. How is that panned out? Secondly, you talked about aftershocks. The things I know about an earthquake is this. An earthquake, the real quake, is said to be an earthquake based on the number of the quake on the Richter scale. So if you have an aftershock that is higher than this particular number on the Richter scale, that becomes the real earthquake and this becomes the aftershock. So what are the levels of the aftershocks happening already on the Richter scale? Some of them noticed thus far. Is there any of them that has compared to the 6.7% threshold of this earthquake?
6.8.
6.8% threshold.
I've heard from experts it's around 4.
Okay.
And this particular earthquake caused so much damage because it was near the center surface of the Earth. Earthquakes often happen, perhaps hundreds of miles below the surface of the Earth. But this was about 30 or 40 kilometers below the surface of the Earth. And because of that, that's why the devastation was so high. As far as the getting access to the road, I've got a 4x4 truck waiting for me downstairs at the moment because no other vehicle can get to the region. I'm traveling down there later this morning after this chat with you guys. And the roads to the main areas of devastation, that's about 60 kilometers south of Marrakesh, have been covered in boulders and landslips, and it's taken a long time for the roads to be cleared, and still many of them are not cleared. And it's such a vast area. It's hundreds of square kilometers down there that rescuers have to try to get to these villages and towns which are remote at the best of times. I've been trekking in that area some years ago, and I can tell you some of these places are really remote, and it's steep. To get to some villages, you kind of on your hands and knees going up the mountain track sometimes. It's a very, very difficult area, and it's going to take a long time before rescuers get to everyone. And sadly, because people have been buried 3 days now, they won't survive. Even if they get there today with some excavator, it's going to be almost impossible to find some people, whole families buried under rubble. It's really a terrible situation, and those excavators have to get there, and they're difficult to get to on roads that are not in the best of condition anyway, even though they've been cleared. The task is huge. That's why Morocco is so grateful for the Western help that's starting to arrive. Red Crescent were one of the first charities in there, but they've got to do an assessment. You can't just send generators and this and that without knowing what is actually needed on the ground, and then you have to do a survey first, and that can take time purely because of the scale of what's needed. But at least there is some relief getting there this morning, and I hope later today to present on Arise News some update from the region. But my goodness me, what a difficult task the rescuers have, and of course it's echoes of what happened in Turkey and Syria back in February of this year. And aid agencies say it's going to take weeks, months, a long, long time before the region recovers.
Well, thank you very much, John, for bringing us updates from Marrakesh in Morocco. I can't imagine the devastation there, but thank you very much for letting the world know what's going on there. Hopefully, we'll see you later on in the course of the day.